because City Power has made a major change to how electricity connections are handled in Johannesburg, saying homeowners and businesses must now take care of the cabling that runs from their meter to their buildings. Now, under the new rule, the power utility will stop installing or fixing these links, leaving property owners responsible for buying and fitting the correct service cables themselves. City Power also warned that before any reconnection can happen, the wiring must meet safety standards and be done by a certified electrician. Let's now make sense of how will this work with City Power spokesperson Isaac Mangena. Isaac, thank you so much for the time. Why? Why are we making consumers now responsible for this, considering the health risks, the shortage risks that could ultimately happen, the financial risks that we're now throwing right onto consumers' tables now? Good morning.
Good morning, Arabil, and good morning to the viewers at home. Look, this is not a new thing that we are starting. This is just a reminder because of the extent at which we have seen the increase in the amount of service cables that are being stolen, and also the money that City Power itself is actually losing when replacing such service cables. So it's something that it has always been there since, because it's carried in the bylaws of the city of Johannesburg in terms of the supply of electricity. And it basically indicates that the consumer will be responsible for the installation and also the reinstatement, should that cable be stolen, of any service cable that is basically being stolen. And I think we've seen this, especially in most of the non-affluent areas, where the cable from the box, the pole outside to the houses is being stolen and basically being reused for illegal connections, especially in the informal settlements that are nearby. So that is something that we thought we should just remind customers as part of our awareness campaign, to say they are responsible for those service cables, and should they be stolen, then they will have to basically ensure that they foot the bill for those cables when they get stolen, because it is something that basically belongs to the customer and not really City Power after installation.
Okay, and look, and I guess I'm going to have to need a little bit more clarity on this one. Look, for one, I will admit that I perhaps didn't know this part. To say that from that box right through to my household, I'm now responsible for that piping, for the wiring, shall I say? But that wiring itself, does that not risk putting in the incorrect one? And I know that it needs to be done by a certified electrician, etc., etc. But even if I do that, it's not your responsibility anymore. It's not your responsibility as City Power. So I can choose to put in whatever it is I want, which could risk electrical shortages, not just to my house, but certainly to the houses in and around the area too, which can create an even bigger problem for yourselves, wouldn't it?
Yeah, look, let me first clarify what the service cable is before I answer that question. So the service cable is this connection, critical connection between City Power's infrastructure and also the customer's property. So City Power would have done the high voltage or medium voltage installations until the box outside. And to pull that cable to your DV box inside the house is what City Power will do when we start the installation. But immediately after that, should there be anything that happens to that cable, be it being stolen or even damaged, that is the responsibility of the customer. Now, to answer your question about the quality, so what we do normally, and I think you'll know this from the developers' point of view, is that developers will do their own internal reticulation of electricity connections, and when they are done, they will give City Power, which is or any municipality, what we call a certificate of completion, COC. And with that certificate of completion, it basically has strict requirements set by the standard regulations as well, to basically give you the technical standard of what is needed, and basically the quality of what is needed. So even with this, when the cable is stolen, we say a customer should go and buy the cable. We can, as City Power, give those technical specifications for the customer. on the type and quality of the cable that they need to basically buy. Then they install it. They get their own technician to install it, and then from there we would have isolated that area so that it's safe for you to work in that area, and then we'll then come back and re-energize the area. Before we do the re-energizing, we'll need to see that certificate of completion or COC, which will then indicate that you have done everything by the book and it's safe now for us to be able to energize your power. So that's basically that we need to do before anything can happen.
So basically, there won't be any power coming through through those wires or through to my household unless the quality of the wiring is as stated by City Power, correct?
Yes, that's correct, and
Okay.
I think we're doing this for safety purposes. And we have seen in some areas in recent times where people go to the nearby warehouse or shop and try to buy
Sure.
substandard cable that is very cheap and try to put it on their system.
Okay.
And I think that is where
Isaac.
the fires risks are actually coming through.
Isaac, what happens then if, and I'm going to use myself as an example here, what if I go and I pay somebody illegally and as they say, oh, just make it seem as though we've used the right wiring here, and it becomes an illegal connection in some ways, and we'll give the city a COC that mandates as if we've actually put in the right wiring here, and we just move on. As long as there's power to the house, I'm going to use cheap equipment, cheap wiring. What happens to me then?
Look, first, it's illegal for that technician to be able to do that. And I think even in terms of the developers, and I'm talking about major developers who are building complexes and shopping malls and so forth, they are no, you cannot bypass the standards in that way. But should you do that, there will be issues with insurances, especially when there is fire that may start because of the shoddy workmanship that would have happened on your infrastructure. And I think even ourselves, before we liven up electricity to your property, we do have internal expertise to be able to test and be able to identify, even from face value, if the cable is of the standard that is needed, of the specification that are needed. So I think we are advising against doing that, because it may actually even damage your own equipment in the house. TVs may blow up and so forth. So we don't advise anyone to basically try to bypass the system, but to basically just do the right thing, get the proper cables, ask City Power for assistance where you need proper specifications, and then we'll be able to do that. Then that's what we'll also be doing before we liven up your house. We will then be able to test, and the technicians can then certify that this is correct.
All right. I certainly hope that the problems that could abound in this certainly aren't at play. Isaac, I'd be remiss, though, if I didn't ask you about these two questions, and I just have to ask these ones very quickly. Report surfacing of City Power contractors demanding what is a near 46,000 Rand bribe. How widespread could corruption ultimately be in City Power within contractor networks? And what steps could be taken to root it out?
Yeah, look, I think we have already considered in terms of, or never ruled out, the involvement of our own internal staff members, permanent staff members, but also even contractors and security guards in terms of some of the challenges that we're having, including cable theft and vandalism, and also where people are being bypassed or electricity is being stolen. And I think we have intensified in terms of the efforts to ensure that we arrest those, especially among us, that are being found to have done certain things wrong or work against City Power in terms of some of the challenges that we're having. And this week, one of the teams that we've put together, the specialized team within City Power, has basically managed to crack some of these people that are involved, the contractors who have been going around soliciting some money from customers so that they do not disconnect them or they can bypass their meters. So that's something that we have always been worried about, that our own people are involved. And I think in the past few recent months, we have proven to basically crack this, with many of our own staff members arrested, either for theft of infrastructure or even this bypassing. And we appeal to the residents to not be part of this criminality, because where there's a corrupter, there's also a corruptee. And often you find that customers themselves initiate the talks about, let me give you money so that you can bypass my meter.
Okay,
because
Isaac,
when we come to disconnect, that person may not be there and you'll be liable for penalties.
Isaac, very quickly as well, leadership change. Of course, one of your longest-serving CEOs recently resigned. The impact of that leadership vacuum and the process in finding a new CEO, how's that faring?
Look, I think Ms. Shufela Mashava has really served City Power very well in the past 10 years in various roles, including the last 4, where she was the CEO running the ship and basically making sure that she turns the entity into an energy ready or the future energy ready institution. And we are sad that she's leaving, but we are also happy of the input that she has made to the entity and also our lives. But in terms of the leadership, I think one of the things that she was good at, coming from the HR background, was to basically to develop talent. And most of the people that are serving in executive positions at City Power are really ready to basically even take over some of these responsibilities. But the board said last week to basically accept the resignation and to see who can basically, in the meantime, in the interim, run the entity. And Mr. Charles Pluwan, who is a long-term also electrician within City Power, is basically going to be acting as a CEO while the processes by the city, especially the city manager, continue to find a replacement CEO. So currently, there is no leadership vacuum. We are basically hard at work to ensure that we keep the lights on in the city of Johannesburg while we wish Ms. Mastaba a farewell.
Isaac Mangena, appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining us